Nice. I can start now?
Yeah.
Welcome, everyone. Today, we're going to talk about what's on everyone's mind. Is it time to buy or is it time to sell? That's a question that I myself have been asking. And today, we're going to dive really deep into this topic and look at both sides of this argument, whether it's the right time to buy because interest rates are so low, or is it the right time to sell because people will pay you just about anything for your property right now. So we're going to get started by actually having a self-awareness Q&A. So I'm going to need whoever's watching this right now. I'm going to take my time to let you guys come on here. I'm going to go pretty slowly during this slide. I'm going to need you guys to be self-aware for two reasons, because I need you guys to understand whether you should be on the selling side right now or you should be on the buying side. And number two is because the more you participate, the more it'll allow us to get into discussion. So leave your answers in the comments section, and the person who does two things, comments, and at the very end of this presentation, request more information, will be entered into winning a free training course that I offer through my website. So we're going to get started with this Q&A, and I'm going to start with the first question. How many deals have you done as a professional investor? That could be a flip. That could be an acquisition where you keep it as a rental. Either one. Just leave it in the comment section how many deals you've done. Let's not count wholesales right now, because I don't think wholesales right now are even really that prominent. We're going to talk more about whether you've done any flips or whether you've done any acquisitions to rent. So let's just write that into the comment section. And all of these answers will come in handy at the end, I promise you. Just be very transparent. No one is judging anyone else. Just leave your answers below. What year did you start? What year did you start investing? Did you just start 6 months ago, or did you start 20 years ago? You know, this is going to play a major part in your psychology, because if you have nothing to compare your experience to, you're going to think very differently than the guy who has ridden 2 or 3 different waves before. There's a different psychology for someone who has experienced this stuff before as someone who maybe is just entering the market now and has no other data to actually compare this to. So be very transparent here and just answer, what year did you start investing? If you can't remember, just take an estimated guess. How many properties do you currently own? Do you have one property? Do you have 100 properties? How many properties do you currently own? This is going to be very important. If you own 0, it's okay. Just put in 0. I guess your answer will be much easier to to come to terms with. If you don't own any right now, you're just going to have to answer, is it the right time to buy? Next question. When do you want to retire? When I say retire, I don't mean retire from real estate, because I don't think any one of us will ever be able to retire from real estate, even if we tell ourselves that, you know, once I get to this many properties, I'm not going to buy anymore. It's not that easy. Once real estate has you, it has you for life. It's not something you just grow out of. So what I mean by when do you want to retire is, when do you want to slow down on other things you do for money? Maybe you have a full-time job or a part-time hustle, or maybe you do, you know, too many things and not enough dedicated time to your family. So what age do you really want to just slow things down and maybe live off of your investments? That's an answer that everyone has to have planned in their mind, because if you don't, then you're just going at this haphazardly. We want to make sure that we have a game plan in effect. Next is, how much liquid assets do you have? How much cash do you have readily available? Do you have a stack of cash because you sold everything recently, or are you very, very tight and you're rich on paper, but you're broke in liquid? This is a question that some of you may feel a little awkward answering. Don't worry, we're not here to judge each other. If you want to answer this very kind of broad, you can say, listen, I have a ton of cash, or I have very little cash, or I'm right there in the middle. This is for you. This is not for us to grade each other. This is for you to have an understanding whether you should be buying or whether you should be selling in this market right now. And the last question is, are you employed? Do you have a way, of means to make money besides living off of your investments? Do you have a full-time hustle that pays you 6 figures a year? Do you have no job and you just live off your investments? You have to kind of answer this question, because besides making money from real estate, we also have to have a game plan for surviving in case of a downturn. We have to make sure that we have enough money to provide for way of life for our families and for our expenditures, and especially for any future investments that may be coming up. So you have to answer this as well. Are you currently employed? If not, it's okay. If you're just a real estate hustler, you're just doing real estate, you can just say, look, I'm the only business I have is my real estate holdings, and that's totally fine. All right, so now let's jump into this great quote by one of the world's greatest investors that has ever lived, Warren Buffett. You guys may not think of Warren Buffett as being a real estate investor too much, but he does have a pretty good grasp on real estate by his acquisition of Prudential, which is now Berkshire Hathaway. So real estate is definitely in his portfolio. And one of the quotes that's attributed to him is, be fearful when others are greedy, and be greedy when others are fearful. Now, that's a very easy quote to comprehend, right? If everybody is scared, then that's when you should be buying. And when everyone is greedy, for example, in 1929, right before the Great Depression, we had a stock market crash, and at that point, everyone was in the stock market. There's a story that even the shoeshine boys would give you stock tips. And when you know it's like that, that means that everyone's being greedy, and that's when you should be fearful because things are about to change. That could be said about the real estate market right now, but also an argument can be said about, hey, the real estate market right now is very scary. Maybe we should be buying. So this is one of the most confusing real estate markets that I think anyone has ever seen. When all of the signs are pointing to a lower real estate market, it seems like the opposite is happening. When all the fundamentals are broken, it seems like we have records in just about every category. And today we're going to try to make some sense of this mystery that we're having in the real estate market. So let's take a look at the pandemic real estate boom. I guess that's the only thing we can call it. That's basically what it is. It's a real estate boom attributed to something that should have been a negative on the real estate industry, but it's a boom. Now, what should have happened? First of all, we should have had record mortgage delinquencies. We should have had a humongous amount of people missing mortgage payments, okay? We're not really seeing that right now. We should have also had a record amount of rental delinquencies, which means that a lot of people who are renting, and believe it or not, the majority of Americans rent, and the majority of Americans do not own real estate, they rent, okay, by a wide margin. And we should have seen a humongous amount of rental delinquencies. We should also have seen a stock market crash, which we only saw momentarily. And I think a lot of investors were ready for this because it looks like we had the quickest recovery in the stock market that we've ever seen in human history, which is just incredible because there's so many negative factors going on. And what we should have also seen was a real estate market crash. But it seems like the real estate market crash really never came. We were all anticipating it. We're all waiting for it. We're all looking to buy and scoop up these deals that never transpired. And we're going to see what actually did happen. So what we saw instead of record mortgage delinquencies is we saw forbearances. So forbearances are the modern day modifications. If you guys remember the last Great Recession, 2008, the word on the street was modifications, 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 right? You can't make your mortgage payments, no worries. Contact your bank, they'll give you a modification. And that's what got a lot of people in trouble because those modifications were really kind of just rigged. They were a ticking time bomb. And when people figured out that they were not worth the paper that they were signed on, people started to default once again. Modifications had almost a 95% re-default rate, which is just incredible. They should have just done a short sale or foreclosure instead of the modification because the terms on the modification were sometimes even worse than the original terms they signed on to. Now, today we have forbearances, and the forbearance, I guess, program is like the Wild West, you can call it right now, because every bank has a different forbearance program. What a forbearance should have looked like is if you can't make your mortgage payment, we understand. Everyone's going through the same hardship right now. We're all going through this together. You can't make mortgage payments for the next 3 months, no worries. We're going to take those 3 mortgage payments and we're going to put them on the back end of your mortgage. So now instead of owing, let's say, $100,000 on your mortgage, you're going to owe $103,000 on your mortgage, which is a home run for the homeowner, because by the time you end up paying those 3 missed mortgage payments on the back end of your mortgage, 15 years down the road, 20, 25 years down the road, you're going to be paying that in inflationary dollars, which means that those $3,000 worth of mortgage payments would maybe only equate to $300 in the future, because we're losing our dollars worth so quickly that in the future, that may just be a drop in a bucket. And that would have been an absolute home run for a homeowner to do that. But the problem with forbearances is that a lot of banks are actually taking those 3 missed mortgage payments and they're applying it to the 4th month. So for instance, if your mortgage payment was $1,000 a month, you didn't make those 3 mortgage payments, but on month number 4, you have month number 4's mortgage payment due, and you have the 3 mortgage payments you missed. So now you have a $4,000 mortgage payment. If you couldn't make payments on a $1,000 mortgage payment, what makes the bank think you're going to be able to pay 4 months? Now, this is a very, very crazy way of fixing things, because it's just setting up the homeowner and it's prepping them for foreclosure. And we're not seeing it right now, but I guarantee you we're going to be seeing it next year or 18 months down the road. We're going to see a humongous amount of people foreclosing. Right now, there are a lot of lawmakers that are protecting homeowners from getting foreclosed on. But sooner or later, after the elections, that's going to be over. And people are going to have to start to face the music. Then they might try the modification. And we all know from 2008 what happens with modifications. Almost all of them get defaulted on. So we will see a wave of foreclosures. But in my opinion, it's a year to 2 years down the line. And that's all attributed to these forbearances. There are all over the place. Fannie Mae has their own. FHA has their own. Private banks and small institutional lenders, they have their own. So this is really not something that's going to help a lot of people. And remember, guys, people took forbearances because they lost their jobs. And a lot of people got their jobs back because of the PPP program, which allowed a lot of business owners to use government money to aid these employees so they can have a job. But once that PPP money dries up, a lot of employers are going to let their employees go, because a lot of the economy is not going to come back. It's not going to be there. It's just propped up right now with temporary money. Next, we have the eviction moratorium, which is the reason why we're not seeing humongous amounts of evictions. I own a good amount of real estate that I rent out. And I had 1 or 2 tenants that were in default with rent payments prior to the pandemic. But once the pandemic hit, they were covered by the eviction moratorium, which is unfair, but it's the way that things are right now. The eviction courts aren't even looking at anyone right now. If someone's not paying you, too bad. That's part of being a landlord. It's not really fair what's going on right now, because at the end of the day, lawmakers are lawmakers. They're not real estate investors. They're not business people. And they make these policies to help the public, the general public, but in a lot of ways, they're hurting the industries that are creating jobs, the industries that are actually putting people to work. The problem with these eviction moratoriums is that, yes, if a family needs the help, yeah, they shouldn't be foreclosed on because maybe they lost their job during the pandemic. But what happens to the homeowner, the person who is renting the place out, is that they will have to, if they can't make the mortgage payment because they're not getting rent, they're going to have to apply for a forbearance. And we just talked about these forbearances. These forbearances are very, very crazy, for a lack of a better word, because there is really no way to protect the homeowner if in month number 4 they can't make the payments because the tenants still haven't paid you, correct? And let's just say they do extend your forbearance even further. Let's just say they give you 6 months. Let's say they give you a year. If the tenant never ends up paying you, all they have to do is just leave and go to another apartment. And meanwhile, you still have all that back mortgage payments that you still have to make. So this is not fair. And on top of that, remember, just because you're not making your mortgage payment doesn't mean you still don't have to keep up with the property. You still have to pay the maintenance. You still have to pay the taxes. We still have to pay the insurance. So this is a very, very scary time. And because of this, a lot of landlords are going to suffer, which is going to create another opportunity to buy real estate from investors who weren't prepared for this type of situation. Luckily, where we live, or where I was in New Jersey, northern New Jersey, New York, there aren't too many tenants that are looking to not pay you the rent. There's a small amount because a lot of them are employed at this moment, and a lot of them know that if they end up getting evicted down the road, it may be very hard for them to find another apartment or another home because it will leave a stain on their credit. So luckily we're not seeing that, but in other parts of the country and even other parts of the state, there's a lot of people who are not paying their rent. In some places I've heard of as much as 18 to 20% of tenants are not paying their rent. So it does vary from state to state. Now we're also seeing the stock market hitting record highs. And why is that? Why is it that the stock market is so high right now? And one of the reasons is because of the new consumer who has entered who has entered the stock market. A lot of people who took advantage of getting unemployment assistance, $600 a month on top of whatever the state was offering them, found themselves in a position where they had some extra money. Also, you have employers who have taken EIDL money, who have taken PPP money, who are not necessarily doing the right thing with the money, and they find themselves with all this extra cash because their business really never took that much of a loss, and they're taking all this extra money and they're pumping it into the stock market. Also, a lot of people are scared that the dollar is going to lose its value because there's so many trillions of dollars that are being created to offset all the problems we have due to the pandemic, and people are scared that we're going to lose so much value in the dollar that they're putting it in assets. And what is the quickest asset to put it into? The most liquid asset that you can probably put it into right now? It's the stock market. And due also in part to the whole Robinhood application that allows newbie investors to go in and out of the market as quickly as possible. And news travels so fast now with social media, with YouTube, that everyone thinks that they're the next Warren Buffett. So this is basically legalized gambling with the government's money. And since it's not really our money in a sense, we feel more open to just investing it into something that we may not know too much about. Okay? So right now, the stock market is completely upside down on its head. All the fundamentals are broken. Warren Buffett hasn't even purchased any meaningful stock all year long because he himself has said that it doesn't make sense right now what's happening. And Warren Buffett, if you don't know this, only has 2 rules to investing, just 2 rules. Rule number 1, don't lose money. And rule number 2, look at rule number 1. That's it. That's all his rules. And if he thinks right now that it's not a time to buy, you may want to be very careful in what you're investing in if you're looking into the stock market. So with that being said, we're also seeing record real estate prices. We're seeing a real estate boom. I was waiting for the crash. I was waiting for prices to hit the floor. Maybe take the same kind of path that the stock market took back in April. But it didn't happen. At most, real estate prices dropped maybe 1% for a moment in time, but then it quickly went back up. Now, real estate is very local, so I'm talking about major cities. I'm not talking about outskirts, or I'm not talking about places that were ghost towns even before the pandemic. What's happening right now is we're seeing the mass migration, mass exodus of people who, number one, do not want to be so close to their neighbors anymore, who don't want to live on top of neighbors, who don't want to be surrounded by too many people because of the fear that they might get contaminated or might put their family in jeopardy. I know people who have literally went and rented houses in the woods because they don't want to be in Hoboken, because they don't want to be in New York City. I see people who are living, I've seen people personally who live in Brooklyn and do not want to be on top of each other, and they have daily riots and daily protests out front, in front of their house. So what are they doing? They're all moving to the suburbs. They're all going to the outskirts. They're moving right outside of these metropolitan cities, and they're all moving to more business-friendly states, such as Florida, Texas, Nevada. People right now are voting with their residents. They're getting out of where it doesn't make sense anymore. And on top of that, people are finding themselves more and more working remotely. So if you had the opportunity to work remotely, do you want to work somewhere where you're going to end up shoveling snow all winter long? Or do you want to go somewhere where it's going to be beautiful throughout most of the year? So a lot of people are taking this time right now to improve their quality of life. And that is creating one of the biggest real estate booms that I've ever seen. I've never seen a market where almost every house that's priced right is getting bid up 10+% above asking price. It's just ridiculous. It's crazy what we're seeing right now. I was expecting the exact opposite. And that fear lasted only for maybe less than 30 days, maybe 2 weeks to 30 days is what it lasted for. And then all that pent up demand that was being created by not having the proper amount of inventory even prior to the pandemic, and then even more of a shortage during the pandemic because homeowners were taking their homes off the market because they didn't want to contaminate their families. All of that just created more demand and more demand until we get what we have right now. Okay, now let's make a case for selling. Is this the right time to sell? Now we're going to make a case for selling, and then we're also going to look at the case for buying. The first case for selling is that it is the perfect storm right now for taking profits. When you have record shortage of inventory and you have so many people that are looking and you have mortgage rates that are so low, this creates almost the perfect scenario that anyone could have ever asked for. I don't list a home anymore. My agents don't list a home anymore that doesn't get multiple offers. And if it sells for full price, it was probably priced wrong. It's just about every home right now that we're having problems with appraising because they get offers that are so high. And I don't know where the economy is going to be or the real estate market is going to be in a few months. If all of this over appraising will even create an even better market for selling 6 months down the road. But right now, I'm seeing one of the greatest opportunities for anyone to sell a property, including myself. I've sold a few, and it's just ridiculous how many offers I'm getting. It's nuts. Now, the mass exodus out of these major cities is creating that perfect storm for selling because I recently moved to Florida myself because I wanted to improve my quality of life, my family's quality of life. And I called U-Haul and I asked U-Haul for a truck. And me being as naive as I was, I called the day before. The guy almost laughed me off the phone and told me that U-Haul trucks have been sold out for the last 3 months. New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut has had a humongous exodus. He said, out of the state, people are getting out of here. And I had no idea about that. I had no clue that this was going on. And me being as naive as I was, I ended up having to drive 2.5 hours to Pennsylvania to find a truck to move. But what that shows me is that there is such a demand right now for new housing. And it is one of the, if not the best times to put your home on the market. Even if last year someone told you, you know what you're asking for is probably a little bit too aggressive, I guess you would say, or too optimistic. Right now, it is that time. I'm telling you, I've never seen anything like this. It's almost unfathomable that this is happening right now. A few months ago, if you told me this was going to happen, I probably would have not believed it. We've got record low mortgage rates. If they go any lower, the banks will be paying you to take money on mortgages. And they kind of are. Because if you're getting a 3% interest rate right now, or I've even heard of people getting 2.875, if you're getting interest rates that low, you're going to be beating out inflation pretty soon, which means that it pays for you to have a mortgage because the interest you're paying is going to be less than what prices are going up every month. So it's almost going to be like saving money by having a mortgage. So this is one of the reasons why so many people are buying. And this is one of the reasons why prices are going so high. Because for every point that you go down in a mortgage rate, it will directly be tied to the price that a homes sell for. Because people don't buy homes based on price. They buy homes based on their mortgage payment. And the more they can afford, the more that they will pay. It's insane, but that's the way things are. God forbid that we go back to a market where we have a 6 or 7 or 8% interest rates like we had prior to the Great Recession back in 06 and 07. You're going to see home prices drop by almost half. But I don't know if we can do that because the economy may not be able to take interest rates that high. But anything is possible. You know, if you told me a year ago we're going to have a global pandemic, I wouldn't believe that either. But anything is possible. So this could be a time where we will never see again. And lastly, we have the lowest supply we've ever had in recent history. I mean, we had 10 million new families created from the Great Recession up until present time. And we've only had 4 million new homes created in the same amount of time. We had a 6 million home deficit prior to the pandemic. And now with a lot of people taking their homes off the market and a lot of new buyers coming into the market, it's insane. It's going to take us years to catch up if home builders start building at full force right now. But a lot of home builders are not building at full force because there's still a lot of uncertainty in the market. There aren't hard money programs out there that allow you to build from the ground up. There isn't a lot of this that used to exist before. So we're still going to see a very healthy market if this is what we consistently see for the next few years, because that demand is still going to be there and supply won't catch up for many years to come, unless we see a humongous amount of foreclosures coming into the market, which is yet to be seen. Now let's look at the case for buying. Should we be buying in this market instead of worrying so much about the downside risk? Should we put our money in and just let the real estate industry just run its course? Should we just let things happen? Well, let's look at the argument number one, the cash flow principle. The cash flow principle basically says if a home covers its own expenses and leaves you a small profit at the end of the month, that's a good investment. The reason why is because your tenants are paying off your debt, and they're also increasing your value by paying off the debt every month. They're increasing your net worth every month. And on top of that, you have another force that's working in your favor, which is appreciation. If homes appreciate just with the rate of inflation, you're going to go and increase your net worth by an additional 3% every year, compounded. So what that means is that 30 years down the road, when this mortgage is paid off, not only will you be worth whatever the mortgage payment was, because your mortgage amount was, because your tenants are going to pay that off, but you're also going to be worth that amount compounded by 3% every year if we just be very, very realistic and use the inflation rate as the amount that it goes up every year. And we all know some years it goes up 10%, 20%. We've had years where it's gone up even higher than that. And then some years it's even, and some years it might even go down, okay? So we're being very, very conservative when we say it's just gonna go up with the amount of inflation. Next, we have record high resale values. Why is this important? Because if you're a flipper and you can turn around a home very quickly and you can buy it and you can get it on the market within the next few months, you will be the recipient of more money than you ever thought of for that property. You're going to be able to sell that house for much more money than you ever could have sold that house for in any previous market. And there's such a demand that you'll probably sell it before it's even finished. And you might even sell it with a for sale by owner sign in front of the house. And I'm a real estate agent, and it pains me to say, but homeowners are getting a lot for their home right now, whether it's listed or not listed. But that's just the reality of the market we're in. So you're going to see a lot of money on these homes, and you're not going to have to worry about it sitting for too long, because we're not seeing that at all, especially with renovated homes. Now, cash is trash, which is a quote that was made famous by Ray Dalio, billionaire stock market investor. This man has written one of the bestsellers, Principles. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. I believe I have it on my website if you want to check it out, culture.estate. You can go there, and my whole entire suggested reading list is there. And you could even download it on Audible for free if you check it out. So what Ray Dalio says is that cash is trash, because if you have too much cash, you're just losing that money to inflation, and you're going to be hurt in the long run. So even if a property cash flows itself and doesn't really leave you that much money, you're still in better shape than just having cash. Now, remember, real estate is a very illiquid asset. What I mean by that is very hard to cash your money out. So when you buy something, when you buy real estate, make sure that you understand you're buying it for the long term, unless you're flipping it, but you're not going to be able to flip it in less than a few months, unless you're wholesaling, which is a whole nother animal. So cash right now, if you're holding on too much cash, we don't know what's going to happen a year from now. The dollar may be really hurt by everything that's going on, or maybe with the economy in the near future. We don't know, but we do know one thing. In the long term, cash is always lost compared to assets. Assets go up in value a lot quicker than the value of the dollar compared to other denominations around the world. So you want to be in the stock market, you want to be in precious metals, you want to be in commodities, and you want to be in real estate, because these are assets, and cash is more just like the vehicle that gets you the assets. And cash is consistently devaluing because of inflation, and we don't want to hold on to that long. Once we find a good deal, maybe we should think about taking it down. And lastly, we want to also look at this principle, which is a dollar cost averaging. Dollar cost averaging basically means that you'll never be able to time the market perfectly. You'll never be able to time its peaks, and you'll never be able to time its values. So what I'm saying is that we don't have a crystal ball. So investing over time consistently will always beat the investor that tries to time the market. If your principle, if your goal every year is to buy one property per quarter, then continue to buy one property per quarter, because 30 years from now, even if you thought that you're buying in the highest possible market, it's going to be the lowest market 30 years from now. Because we're programmed as human beings to compare our current situation to what we know up to that time. But what happens over time is that the highs today are the lows of tomorrow. And if you consistently invest, you won't go wrong. Because anyone who bought 30 years ago, do you think they paid more or less than what that home or that building or whatever that strip mall costs today? I guarantee you it was less. And you also factor in inflation, it's much less. So that's an argument that we can also make for why it's always a good time to buy. But just be very cautious and don't get caught up in the hype when you have situations of highest and best. Right now, we don't have sheriff sales. They've been postponed to God knows when. We don't have that many foreclosures hitting the market. And when they do hit the market, they do tend to really gravitate to homeowners. We don't have a lot of the usual outlets that we used to have. So all we have left right now are either motivated sellers, or we might have something on the MLS. And everyone is flooding into the same places. So don't take a swing at everything that comes your way. And sometimes when you don't buy a property is actually when you win. I've told a lot of people that the best investments I've made are the ones I haven't purchased, because I don't get caught up emotionally into what I buy. Because believe it or not, there's always another deal. There's always another opportunity, and there's always another house. And if you can be patient and invest wisely, you'll make it through this pandemic real estate boom better than the way you entered it. Now, next, I want to open up the presentation to questions and answers, because I've given you strong points on why it might be a good time to buy, and I've also given you a lot of strong points on why it might be a good time to sell. So right now, I'm going to check out the comments and see if we have any questions. I know you guys are a little bit on a delay, so I will obviously give you time to respond to any questions I may have for you as well. Let's see if I can find that. All right, so we have 3 comments so far. Okay, Marcus Mullings, you're asking for our website address. Our website address is culture.estate, www.culture.estate. There are no .coms there. Check it out. In there, I have a lot of great resources for you guys as investors. I have my top reading list. I have my essentials that you need as a real estate investor or real estate agent. I have discounted real estate courses in there for an agent. I have discounted real estate courses in there for investors. I have a lot of great material in there that you guys can take for free as well. And just about all the resources that you guys would need in this real estate industry. I completely revamped the website a few months back, and it's really just a one-stop shop for anything you'll need as an investor. Even if you need financing for your deals, I've teamed up with a lot of my best hard money lenders and private lenders, and we've been able to cross promote each other on there. So it's a lot of great stuff. So let's see if we have. Yeah, Mike, that's not the right email. That's not the right website. It's just culture.estate, not culture.realestate. It's just culture.estate. All right. So does anyone else here have any information? Did anyone here want to share any of the personal information that I asked for earlier? How many deals have you done? What year did you start? Are you currently just living off of real estate investments? Tell us a little bit about yourselves. This is going to come in handy, and I'll tell you why.
Come on, Marcus. Tell us about yourself. I know Marcus has a lot. I also know Mike Lucica has a lot.
While we wait for some of these questions, I'm going to give you guys a couple of scenarios that I've recently gone through. My first scenario is that, well, one of my first scenarios, I recently listed a home in Newark that I purchased maybe 2 years ago. Yeah, about 2 years ago for $150,000. Small two-family, newer construction. I purchased that home as a rental, and I'm collecting good rent, no complaints there. And I said to myself, you know what? Let me just test the market because I just had a vacancy come up on the second floor, and I put it on the market for $325. And I said, you know what? I'm being very optimistic. I'm just going to go to $325, and I expect to get somewhere between $300 to $325. I recently got an offer for $380,000 on that house, and I almost fell off my chair. I said, you know what? This is insane. I'm seeing multifamily houses in Elizabeth going for more than they were going for in 2008, which is, to me, it's insane. We're seeing two-family homes going for $600,000. It's crazy, and with multiple offers. So right now is definitely one of those times I've never seen before. Now, let me talk to you about buying opportunities. Buying opportunities right now, and this goes for you, Mike Russ. I'm sure you go nationwide, so you're seeing this. I see a huge opportunity right now in growth states like Florida, Texas, and Nevada, because a lot of people are going to continue to move in that direction. So if you can find homes in good school districts, if you can find homes in strong job markets, you're going to see your investments increase a lot faster than investments perhaps in the major cities that we used to see investments climb in, like Hoboken, New York City. Right now, the mayor of New York City is begging affluent residents to come back or not to leave because they're leaving in droves. And it's something that we've never seen in the last decade or a few decades, is so many people leaving one of the major metropolitan areas. And this is happening everywhere. It's happening in Los Angeles. It's happening especially in California. It's happening in Miami. It's happening in a lot of places because people are moving to where they can reduce their overhead, and they're going to where they can keep their family safer, where there's less incidents of outbreaks. Because believe it or not, I mean, we don't know what the future brings, but I highly doubt this will be the last pandemic. It's not the right conversation for that, but I do think that this could happen again, and a lot of people also think the same. And they're going to places in where they don't have to worry about that as much. All right, we have a question here from a Facebook user. What do you think? What do you think about the rentals of cash flowing property? Will rents go down? Okay, I do not believe that rents will go down. To this day, I have never seen rental prices go down in the major markets that I've worked in. Even through the recessions, I have not seen rental prices go down, because as people lose their homes, they need a place to live. If people go through forbearances and they turn into foreclosures, you're going to see a stronger demand for rental properties. So what I suggest is that you look for strong rental markets right now. And if you can find any opportunities that are cash flow, you're going to continue to have a pretty good income flow there. Just be very careful about who you rent to. And why I say that is because you do not want to have someone move in who is currently right now on unemployment, because they may go back to work, but they may quickly find themselves on unemployment again. You want to find someone who's in an industry that probably will not be affected as much as some industries have. So for instance, if your tenants work in the hotel industry, or if your tenants work for the airlines, or your tenant works for a restaurant, those might be people that you may want to stay away from. You may want to stick to first responders. You may want to stick to people who are self-employed, who have never really taken a beating. You know, their business might be crash proof. So really look at your tenant's employment now. It's more important than it ever was before. All right, Marcus has a question. Nick, Lewis, one of your best presenters. Oh, thank you, brother. I really appreciate that. I really don't have any questions yet because he really has covered the subject at hand. Thank you for that compliment, Marcus. I appreciate that. Mike says that 40% of business leases at NYC did not renew in July. Yeah, that's one topic I didn't talk about. And the retail market, the retail commercial market is going to take a huge beating. I mean, humongous beating. Even banks are preparing themselves for that. They're not really lending to commercial mixed-use properties as much, and if they are, their requirements are much higher. Right now, anything that's retail in nature that could be taken out by the internet is a very, very risky type of property to buy. So for instance, if you're buying a strip mall, and that strip mall has a barber shop, a nail salon, a daycare, those types of things will not be taken over by the internet. But if you have the same strip mall with maybe maybe a clothing distributor, some kind of clothing store, have a bookstore, these type of industries will be wiped out by Amazon, will be wiped out by online sellers. So be very careful if you're buying commercial property right now that you don't have the wrong tenants in there, because those type of tenants have not been able to pay their rents. There could be a huge opportunity right now in some of the hardest hit sectors, such as hotels. There might be a huge right now. You could probably buy a hotel for pennies on the dollar. Right now, you could probably buy a strip mall that has a restaurant in it for pennies on the dollar. And there's going to be a day when we're going to look back and we're going to say, "Damn it! I should have bought that place, that hotel back in 2020, because now that hotel is worth twice as much." Because remember, as my quote stated earlier, that when people are fearful, that's when you need to be greedy. And when people are greedy, that's when you need to be fearful. If anyone's interested, I do have a hotel for sale in New Jersey, in Ocean Township. We could put that together. If you guys want to reach out to me, go to culture.estate and send me a message, and I'll give you more details on that. Claudia, thank you for your comment. You're an NYC full-time real estate investor. God bless you. How are you seeing the real estate market in New York City firsthand? Are you seeing that there is more demand, less demand? I've heard that there's a lot of people moving out of NYC. Is that the case that you're seeing? I'm going to take this one last question, and then I'm going to close out because I'm running over on my time. All right, let me just jump to that now. Okay, this is my last slide. If you guys want to learn more about how we can work together, if you're an investor or if you're a real estate agent, just text the word "learn" to the number you see on the screen right here. If you do, I will give you, if you just go ahead and submit your information here, I will give everyone 50% off our real estate training course, whether you're a real estate investor or a real estate agent. We'll give you 50% off of that. And we'll also be picking one person out of all the people who submit their information to actually get the course for free. So if you want just to learn more about what we can do for you as a real estate company, if you're an investor or if you're a real estate agent, just send your information here and we will be in touch with you. If you guys just want to talk about possible opportunities, maybe a JV, we could also talk about that. We have a lot of different opportunities that we can work on together. So I'll leave the information here on the screen just for a little bit. I'm not sure if Nick is still on this call. or if we have another moderator, so we can close out. Facebook user, I don't know if I'm going to be able to take down your email address. I'm going to see if I can. I just copied it. I'll send you some information about that hotel. And if for one reason or another you don't hear from me, you can always just send me a message on culture.estate. Lastly, what I'd like to tell everyone, if you guys are interested in getting into the real estate business, I'm not sure if you're a real estate agent or if you are looking to get into real estate maybe as a part-time hustle, we're growing our real estate team nationally. We have agents now in 10 different states, and we've grown tremendously. So if you're interested in getting on the front lines and doing real estate also as either your full-time or maybe your side hustle while you're investing, I'd love to talk to you. You could visit me at culture.estate and submit a request to talk with me, and we'll set up a call. Okay, you guys can't see the info? Let me see if I can.
Are you trying to do desktop sharing?
Yeah, Nick, Joel said that we can't see the info. Can I share my screen once again?
Yeah. So when you exit out of it, like you can't go back in. So because I had to come back and press a button for you.
Okay.
Add it back on.
Got it. Let me share my screen once again.
There, let me know when you're ready, and then I'll put it on for you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anytime. There we go.
Yeah, so if you guys want any information about us, if you want to work together in one way or another, you can just text the word learn to this number. And we'll also be giving out one of our training courses for free to anyone, to one person that we pick from here randomly. And anyone who does submit their information will get a 50% discount. Thank you, everyone, for being on this call today, in this webinar, and thank you, Nick, for the opportunity. Sorry for all the birds chirping in the background.
I don't want to just jealous, Louis. All right, thank you.
So this is probably no problem. This is definitely one of the best presentations that I think I've had the opportunity to be a part of. You have a lot of great people on here, so I thank you guys for joining me, and hopefully they can get as much value from the other presenters as they got here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.